What is up, y'all, and welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, my name is Scotty Holiday. I'm a queer creator and a huge Star Wars nerd, so if you're into either one of those things, please consider subscribing for more. In this video, I'm going to be reviewing Andor Episode 9 titled Nobody's Listening. Just like Episode 5, it really feels like a storm is brewing on the horizon. Dedra has essentially gone from the underdog antagonist to a full-on antagonist, and I hate this for her, but we all knew it was coming. And things are only getting more and more uncertain for Cassian and the other prisoners on Narkina 5. But before I get into my review, please make sure to like this video and leave a comment letting me know what you thought of Episode 9. I'm putting out weekly reviews for each new episode of Andor as they air, so make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss out. I've put a link in the cards and the description to my Andor Series playlist so you can check out all of my previous Andor videos as well. Now let's dive into this episode. Episode 9 picks up right where we left off last episode on Ferrix, with Bix being brought to Dedra for interrogation. Dedra explains how the process went with Pac, introducing Dr. Gorst and attempting to intimidate Bix before even asking her a single question. She tells Bix this can be a conversation, or torture, but whatever outcome is completely up to her. In mentioning Dr. Gorst's device, Dedra says it's a system some of them are very excited about, and I feel like she's already made the conscious decision to use it on both Pac and Bix before either of them even arrive, just to really break them. Bix asks if Dedra is a part of the ISB, saying they're the worst of the worst, and I love how this line shows the public's true perception of the ISB. As Dedra starts the interrogation, Bix asks if she'll even believe her answers to begin with, and Dedra literally says no, and immediately summons Dr. Gorst, showing just how cruel she can be. The Empire's display of cruelty is also brought up again when Captain Tigo tells Dedra he wants to hang Pac, just to make sure everybody knows who's in charge. Now, Dr. Gorst is super excited about his device, explaining how it came to be as the guards strap Bix into the chair. He explains of an Imperial refueling center to be built on the planet Dizon Frey, the pushback from the native species, and their eventual massacre at the hands of the Empire, by any means necessary, of course, once again showing the Empire's cruelty and complete disregard for any opposition. He tells Bix the massacre was broadcast as proof of the mission, and the audio of the dying Dizonites, specifically the children, can cause various extreme stages of emotional distress to anyone who hears it, as he prepares and puts a headset on Bix's head. Once the headset's secured, the background music stops, and all we hear is Bix's breathing get more and more frantic. We see her tense up, getting more and more physically uncomfortable, until she eventually lets out a super painful sounding scream. I was super intrigued, but also super nervous about what the audio would sound like, especially since I was watching the show with headphones on too. Dr. Gorst was literally giving me serial killer / mad scientist vibes, and this device really fit the theme so well. I love how we, the audience, didn't actually get to hear the audio of the screams because it really added to that terrifying fear of the unknown. After the explanation and seeing Bix's response, I don't think I want to know, and needless to say, it got her to talk. Throughout the Andor series, they've continued to show us rather than tell, and this is one of those great moments. After the interrogation, Dedra heads back to Coruscant to report her findings on Ferrix to the ISB. Major Partagaz inquires about Axis, but at this point Dedra is still unsure of any leads, but tells Partagaz they now understand the scope of his operations. Dedra informs him of Cassian's return to the planet after the Aldhani attack, mentioning him having a substantial amount of money. Then her assistant interrupts, pointing out Cassian's clean-shaven face being linked to the clean-shaven rebels at the Aldhani garrison. He says two of the soldiers from the garrison noticed similarities too when shown Cassian's hollow mugshot. Supervisor Legret asks why Cassian's mother wasn't questioned, and Dedra says she's decided to wait, telling them that Marva's too old and frail for anything serious and that she's planning to use her as bait. Back on Narkina 5, we catch up with Cassian and his unit during one of their shifts. I assume some more time has passed since we last saw them because he seems pretty integrated at this point. He takes a little bathroom break, or so we think, but actually goes to open a secret panel to reveal some piping and some kind of sharp object that he starts sawing at one of the pipes with. But before we can really speculate further, he's interrupted by the admission of a new prisoner and has to report back to the floor. While the new man is brought in, he speaks with another one of the prisoners about their plan to attack the guards, and it seems like they've all been working to develop an escape plan. At the end of their shift while waiting inside the bridge, Cassian and the other prisoners recognize something is wrong since they're being held way longer than usual. Taga attempts to communicate with a prisoner in another bridge, saying they think something is really wrong on level 2, but no one can confirm exactly what's going on. Then suddenly the power goes out in the facility for a brief second, and once it comes back on, an alarm begins to sound. Kino tries to calm everyone down, but even he seemed a little stressed, not knowing exactly what's going on. Once back in the cell block, Cassian asks Kino straight up if he ever thinks about escaping and how many guards are on each level, and I was really surprised when all Kino said was, "You know I won't answer that." There's obviously some kind of plan forming in Cassian's unit for a breakout, and it seems like he's trying to get Kino on board as well, or at least get some information out of him. I can't blame him. Kino may be in charge of the unit, but at the end of the day, he's still a prisoner just like everyone else, and Cassian is obviously trying to plant that escape seed in his head. Kino would be a huge ally if he gets on board. It's just getting him there that will take time, and Cassian seems to have already been working on it. Cassian explains that the guards at the facility don't care enough to make any effort to listen to them inside the cell block, saying all they really have to do is turn on the floor twice a day, and how they're nothing to them. And he's completely right. He even says we're cheaper than droids and easier to replace. The next morning, Cassian's unit finds out that the prisoners in Unit 2-5 were all fried to death by the passing unit and the bridge, and even Kino confirms this news with the other unit manager. I think this is where Kino finally starts to see the situation in the facility for exactly what it is, while trying to keep it together as the leader. Throughout the scenes on Narkina 5, we also see Ulaf mention some issues with his hand to the group and asking questions they've already gone over, so at this point I knew something was wrong with him. We see him struggle with his memory and motor skills as the episode continues, and he eventually collapses in the middle of the shift. Cassian and the rest of his team have to literally carry Ulaf into the bridge, and after he collapses again, Kino requests a medic. Throughout the episode, they make it a point to mention Ulaf's sentence only having 41 days left, and all Kino wants to do in this moment is get him through these last days, but the medic tells him it's not an option, informing them that Ulaf had a massive stroke and the only thing he can do is give him a peaceful passing. He even tells Kino and Cassian, another week like this and you'll be begging for what he's getting. The medic's grim tone causes Cassian to ask about the incident on level 2, but all the medic says in response is for Kino to keep his men in line. Then, after Ulaf's passing, Kino asks about the incident, and the medic reveals that the prisoner from level 4 was released at the end of his sentence, only to be brought back on level 2 instead of actually being released from the facility. He says they weren't careful about the change, and after word got out on the floor, the Imperials killed every prisoner on that level, confirming that nobody is getting out. After this revelation, Cassian asks Kino how many guards are on each level again, and Kino finally gives him an answer. Things are about to get real on Narkina 5. Next, let's go back to Coruscant to talk about Mon Mothma. We see her in the Senate chamber giving a speech against Imperial overreach and the PORD legislation, saying that it's just their next step towards complete unchallenged authority. Other senators in the chamber can be heard shouting oppositions, agreements, and even booing. As she continues, many of them begin turning off their pods and just leaving the session, while those that stay become increasingly louder, drowning out Mon, who literally has the floor, and you can tell she's starting to feel defeated as well. On her way back home, her driver Cloris informs her that her cousin has arrived at her home, and we find out that her cousin is none other than Vel. I was super surprised to learn that Vel is her cousin, which in turn makes Luthen's relationship to Mon even more interesting. Mon's aware of Vel's involvement with Luthen, asking her where she's been for the past 6 months, showing she genuinely cares, but Vel cuts the pleasantries real quick, saying the Empire doesn't rest. The rebellion comes first, we take what's left. And sadly, I think she's only acting this way after Cinta told her the same thing in the last episode. Mon tries expressing her concerns, but Vel shuts her down. During breakfast the next day, on top of Perrin's already growing list of bad traits, this episode shows he's also a misogynistic piece of shit. As they talk about Vel's trip back to Chandrila, Perrin asks her if she's found a husband yet, saying, "You need a widower at this point. Who's left of any value at your age?" And I was like, Vel seems pretty young. I mean, the actress who plays her is only 35, so Perrin mentioning her age and the husband question overall felt so misogynistic. Plus, we all know that Vel is a lesbian, which Mon is also aware of by the look she gives her after the inquiry, and she's already taken. This question felt way too real as a queer person. Like, how many of us have been asked the same question during a family get-together? I know I have in the past. I love Vel's response though, saying finding a husband isn't on her list of things to do and all the good ones are taken, which felt like a direct jab at Perrin, confirmed by Mon's little smile and chuckle to herself. The drama really starts though when Perrin mentions their recent visits from Kolma, and even Lita chimes in saying mother's old boyfriend, which made me cackle. Mon plays coy, saying they were just in grade school together, but I'm just glad we got this confirmation because she and Tay's chemistry is still so apparent. As Mon walks Vel out, Vel asks if there's anything she can do to help with Mon's banking issues, but all Mon tells her is to be a spoiled rich girl for a while, saying, "Remind people that's who you are." And I have to assume she's saying this to help keep Vel safe, not giving anyone a reason to suspect what she's doing behind closed doors. Before she leaves though, Mon tells her she's still uneasy about everything going on, but Vel reassures her, saying they've chosen a side and are fighting against the dark, making something of their lives, and I really love this response. Later on, Tay meets with Mon about her accounts and his concern over covering up her 400,000 credit withdrawal. He says the easiest way to cover it up is with a deposit, and like Mon, I had to laugh at this idea because who just has 400,000 credits laying around? Tay tells her best option would be to get a loan, and realizing he already thought things through, she asks who he had in mind. Tay says the name Davos Skolden, who Mon refers to as a thug, and of course, she's totally against the idea. But at this point, Tay's already spoken with Skolden about the proposal, telling Mon he wants to meet her on Coruscant, but we don't get a confirmation whether or not Mon accepted the proposal. I feel like she knows she has no other choice at this point, and I have to wonder if we'll actually get to see this meeting on screen and how she'll explain it. We also get an update with Syril this episode. His mother questions him about his whereabouts, saying, "You're home late, up early," and inquires if he's not telling her something, but in response, he confronts her about going through his things, mentioning his private box. But his mother is way more concerned about what she believes she's owed in return for taking Syril in, referring to her assistance as an investment. As she explains what she feels is due, Syril literally picks up his bowl of cereal and starts slurping the blue milk just to tune her out. Afterwards, Syril tells her he's been promoted. Their dynamic is just so bizarre, and their relationship is so toxic. After their conversation, we catch up with Syril outside of the ISB headquarters, where it turns out he's waiting for Dedra. I imagine he's been doing this every day, explaining why he's been leaving home early and coming home late. He finally runs into her, literally blocking her from continuing forward, all just to thank her for clearing his record and getting him the promotion, though she says she had nothing to do with it and even accuses him of stalking her. Cyril's low has hit a new point in this episode, where he's now finding solace in Dedra's dedication to justice, as he calls it. Their exchange was just so awkward and uncomfortable to watch, especially when he grabs her arm to keep her from leaving the conversation, and he's basically professing his love to her because she's a super fascist girl boss. I don't know, but on the other hand, Syril has huge mommy issues, so his new infatuation with Dedra doesn't surprise me. Now, speaking of Dedra and the ISB, she's informed by her assistant that the Empire picked up a random rebel pilot and are holding him on a Star Destroyer. She instructs him to send Dr. Gorse there to interrogate the pilot, but her assistant informs her he already did. I also had to laugh when Dedra says she'll interrogate remotely. Like, just imagine her trying to interrogate someone over a Zoom call. I'm also curious if her assistant is trying to climb the ladder. It wouldn't surprise me, but he could also just be trying to assist Dedra to make her life easier. I really don't want to see a falling out between her and her twink bestie assistant, but who knows what'll happen. Dedra and her assistant then go to report to Major Partagaz on the rebel pilot, informing him of the use of stolen Imperial equipment and his ties to Anto Krieger's group, the group Luthen tried to talk Saw Gerrera into working with in episode 8. During the interrogation, the pilot informed the Imperials about the raid they have planned at the power station on Spellhouse, which is also the mission Luthen referred to during the same conversation with Saw. Major Partagaz and the other supervisors know that Krieger's group will realize the pilot is missing, so they can't keep him prisoner, but they also can't let him go. So, they devise a plan to sabotage the ship, staged, as Dedra puts it, to look like a mechanical issue as to not cause any alarm. They want Krieger's group to attack Spellhouse, especially now that they know about it, probably so they can capture the rebels and get closer to discovering the identity of Axis. It's just so crazy that as a part of the governing body who is supposed to act in the best interest of the people, they really don't even care about the people. All the ISB and the Empire as a whole cares about is control and order, and as we've seen time and time again, they'll do anything to keep it. So at this point, I think we may see Cassian's prison break and the attack on Spellhouse next episode, and if so, this episode will be jam-packed with action. If anything, I think we'll at least get to see the prison break and hopefully the meeting between Davos Skolden and Mon Mothma. I really feel like things are only going to continue to get darker from here, and I'm cautiously excited about what will happen going forward. But what did you think of the episode, and what do you think will happen next week in episode 10? Let me know down in the comments below or hit me up on Twitter so we can chat more about it. I'm putting out weekly reviews for each new episode of Andor as they air, so make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss out. I've put a link to my Andor Series playlist with all my previous episode reviews in the description and on the end screen of this video. Please consider checking them out and leaving a like. I really appreciate all of your support so much. You can also catch me next week on the Wayseekers podcast talking all about Andor episode 10. I'll put their links in the description below. Make sure you check them out as well. Make sure to like this video and consider subscribing to my channel for more Star Wars content. To keep up with my latest updates, you can follow me on Twitter and Instagram. My links are in the description below. Thank you as always for watching, and may the Force be with you.